It's My Nerd World and Depeche Mode, the podcast. On this week's episode, we've got a new batch of remixes and a brand new video. And is this the beginning of the end as the Memento Mori tour comes to a close? I'll share my thoughts, and we'll also hear from you with the listener feedback this week. Thank you so much for checking out the episode. If you want, you can always head on over to mynerdworld.net to find out all about My Nerd World, Depeche Mode, the podcast, and the other podcasts that I do as well. Now, let's go ahead and get to this week's episode.
Hello, this is Martin Gore from Depeche Mode.
Hi, this is Dave Gahan from Depeche Mode, and you are listening to
My Nerd World.
And welcome to it. I'm your host, Jon Justice, here for My Nerd World and Depeche Mode, the podcast. Took a week off. Wish I hadn't, to be honest with you. I had to do some traveling. I ended up, from Wednesday until Sunday morning, I was in Savannah, Georgia for some conferences that I just had an absolutely amazing time. I've lived in Georgia before, but I've never been to Savannah, and I wish I could have taken in more of the city, but I did get the opportunity to walk around a bit, check out the rivers, head to the downtown area, and of course, appropriately, when I was alone, I had my headphones in, I was listening to Depeche Mode, and specifically Delta Machine, considering that I was in the South and the blues influence that is all over Delta Machine. I figured, what better album could there be to listen to while walking around a southern city as historic as Savannah, Georgia? And it was the absolute right pick. Really had an amazing time while I was there. Unfortunately, had a lot of information that dropped while I was gone, and I was going to take the opportunity to do a podcast from the hotel room. It just would have been stripped down without having my home studio that I'm in right now and all the bells and whistles that afford me the opportunity to play my little sounders and stuff. Unfortunately, I couldn't get it working on my laptop, so I had to wait. I was going to start with the end of the tour and what comes next. I'm going to hold off on that. I'm going to switch up a bit of the order of how I wanted to do things. And let's start off first with the news that came out with regard to the release of People Are Good and the video. Let's start there, and then we'll get into the more heady topic, and I'll share my thoughts on whether or not this is actually the end of Depeche Mode. I'm pulling this from an article because it has the relevant details, and I'll share my further thoughts here in just a moment. But from 93.7 The Eagle, 93.7 TheEagle.com. As Depeche Mode approaches the grand finale of their Memento Mori tour, the band has rolled out an expansive remix package for their 2023 track, People Are Good. Now, of course, adding my little bit of commentary in here, this came as a bit of a surprise, and I've had a few of you reach out to me and also point out this fact. When I was talking with the guys from Signal in the interview from the last podcast, they really made it sound like they remixed People Are Good as a fluke, and that perhaps it would be included in something later on, or maybe nothing at all. Then we come to find out that, no, they actually ended up commissioning, it sounds like, some remixes for the album. So I'm wondering if somewhere lost in this is where the truth lies. Part of the issue is that we don't really know how this process works right now with the band and how they put together these single, remix packages. Are they commissioning these artists and choosing the songs to go and remix? Did they hand out the different tracks to the album, and have they compiled a whole bunch of remixes and then decided which ones they wanted to turn into singles? My guess is the band chose which songs they wanted to put out as singles and then went out and asked for these remixes, and Signal just happened to have remixed People Are Good. Dave and Martin enjoyed it. They have a close relationship with the band, and they went ahead and included their remix in with the other artists that they had already commissioned to do the remix. I'm not surprised that People Are Good is a single. I think a lot of us were expecting Don't Say You Love Me to be one of the singles, considering its inclusion at the end of the Wagging Tongue video. Now, that being said, I think there's also a possibility that that could still come about. I have this feeling, and I have this funny feeling, and I've had it for a while. I don't think it's going to come to fruition, but I wondered if whether or not at some point the majority of the album would be given the remix treatment. If this was something the band had decided to do, considering that we've had so many remix packages from the album already. I mean, officially, almost half the album in remix packages. Before We Drown, My Favorite Stranger, Speak to Me, Wagging Tongue, Ghosts Again, My Cosmos Is Mine. I know that not all of these are filled with various remixes, but we certainly do have almost half the album in some sort of remix form, and this is a trend that they could continue long after the tour is done. As I've talked about before on the podcast, I wish we were getting CD versions of these singles, but it seems that the most cost-effective way to deal with this now is to continue to put out fresh material in terms of remixes, to continue support of Memento Mori, and at the same time release these as, vinyl releases only, because it's probably the most cost-effective way. It's, I imagine, pretty cheap to go and commission vinyl to be made in terms of a manufacturing process, and they get to charge a relatively a top dollar for those particular releases. Whereas if they put them out on discs, which are falling by the wayside, they wouldn't get nearly as much money. So I don't know. I kind of expect that we may still get some more remix packages from this album, and I think it would be rather interesting if we ended up getting a remix package of some sort for every track on the album. I'm not holding my breath on that, by the way. I'm just saying that is a possibility just based off of the trend of what we've seen coming from the band so far. I mean, just because the Memento Mori tour is ending, one could easily make the argument that that is the end of the Memento Mori tour. This is the end of the Memento Mori era as well, and therefore this comes to an end of the single releases, as you would want those releases to continue to support the tour. But clearly, the tour didn't need these remix packages to be supported based off of the level of success that they've had. And of course, through all of this, if you want to drop me an email, talkshownerd@gmail.com, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. Let me get back to this article. This release not only commemorates their closing UK and European tour dates, but also enriches their latest album, Memento Mori, with additional layers of creativity. Central to this launch is a fresh music video helmed by Rich Hall, depicted through a series of artful black and white clips that delve into the darker aspects of society. And of course, at the end of the video, there's a twist in all of this that not everything was as it seemed as the video was moving through its various different black and white scenes that were depicting violence, only to turn out to be something much different at the end. Very indicative of the themes of the song itself. And I thought in that regard that it was a pretty good video. I would have liked to see Anton Corbijn do something, but the video fits in nicely with Anton Corbijn's work and the other videos that have been released for the album. I'm still very hopeful that we're going to get some sort of box set, and maybe that will also include this collection of videos that they have released. I think this would be a nice addition to all of our collection, and they would all fit together, very nicely, considering even though they've been done by various directors, including Anton Corbijn, who did most of the videos. This would be a nice package, considering that they are all very similar in style. Complementing the visually striking video are 5 newly minted remixes brought to life by an eclectic mix of artists, including Alessandro Cortini, Ludwig AF, Signal, Obscure, and Indira Paganota. I'll say, I really enjoy the remixes. They're a little bit too dancey for me. As always, I always opine about the desire to have those extended mixes like we used to have in the past, right? where it keeps the shell of the song intact while giving us an extended mix. I do very much enjoy the AC full mix that leads the remix packages, where they slowed the track down considerably. I found that to be a very interesting take on the song that's got a fairly beat-heavy drive to it. And as I've made mention before on the show, could have been lifted from the, some great reward construction time again era, in my opinion. These interpretations add unique dimensions to the track, further amplified through the availability of the physical vinyl format. The Memento Mori White Label Remix series, culminating in a final release. Okay, so maybe this is a final release. I don't know if this is the article writer jumping to a conclusion or if they've received official information that I have not yet seen. But they do say, culminating in a final release, bridges the digital and tangible worlds of music accessible through the band's U.S. web store and select retail outlets in Europe. As the curtain draws near with their penultimate show at Cologne's Langes Arena. Am I saying that right? Depeche Mode's venture stands as a testament to their enduring appeal and innovative spirit. And if you thought stadium shows couldn't get any cooler, Depeche Mode reminds us that sometimes simplicity and a dash of effortlessness trump over-the-top pyrotechnics and theatrics, or, as they show, less can indeed be more. And I would, kind of disagree with that. I think this tour stands up with some of their greatest tours in terms of production, and I certainly didn't feel that there was any sort of sense of less is more in any respect. I mean, perhaps if you were going back to the days of the Devotional tour, you might be able to make that argument as the first part of that tour, not the exotic leg where they stripped it down the set. That was certainly the most complicated and dynamic set that the band's ever put on. But since then, I mean, this tour was just as detailed and unique as every tour that they've gone on the road for since the release of Songs of Faith and Devotion. So as always, what are your thoughts? TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you, and whether or not you think this is the end of any more remixes or videos for Memento Mori. I suppose at some point they have to stop, but just considering the amount of material and content they've produced, and again, I'm pointing back to Wagging Tongue and Don't Say You Love Me, and partly it's me hoping, because I absolutely love that song. It's one of my favorite songs on the album. Love to know what your thoughts are. All right, so let's go ahead and get to the, a part of the show that I don't think any of us want to talk about, but we have to go there. Is this the end? Or is this the end of the beginning of the end, or the beginning, or the beginning of the end of the beginning? Before I play this audio, and before I heard Dave on stage at the final show in Cologne, my thought was really leaning towards this isn't the end. That we may be looking at the Memento Mori era, or this era of Depeche Mode, this final iteration of Depeche Mode, and it being a much smaller era. But clearly, there is still a massive demand for this band, despite the age of both Dave and Martin. And clearly, they had a lot left in the tank based off of what they were able to do in this incredibly long, for all intents and purposes, tour that they've just put on. Dave, at the start of the tour, was putting out energy that I certainly did not expect, and that energy didn't seem to slow down at all throughout the entirety of this tour. The demand for merchandise and the fan base is there, and it's as big as it's ever been since the height of their strength, going back to Violator and Songs of Faith and Devotion. The comments from Dave that I'll share with you at the end of the, at the final show, kind of throw that a bit into question. So let me go ahead and play Dave's comments as they closed out the show, the last show on the Memento Mori tour.
I want to thank Pete and Christian, especially, of course, for being part of what we've just been doing for the last year. Or more. And most importantly, the road crew. All the road crew, everybody, all there's like 100 people to make this thing happen every night. And it's really been a special tour. You know, we've had obviously some challenges at the beginning. We lost our friend, and Martin and I decided to carry on making this record. We did a tour. I'm glad we did. Anyway, most importantly, I want to thank you all for being with us all these years. It really means a lot to us. Thank you so much.
So throughout the tour, Dave was closing out the shows with his typical see you next time. And of course that didn't happen here at this final stop on the tour in Cologne, Germany. And I have a listener feedback that points out this fact as well. Heading into the promotion of the album before its release, in a few interviews, not all of them, but in a few interviews, you know, Dave had talked about his reluctance of getting back together. This would be before Fletch passed away. And that he was kind of done as they went through COVID and wasn't sure about getting back out on tour again, whether or not they wanted to embark on such a journey. And through the process of making the album, rekindled his friendship with Martin that they've been so very vocal about, mourned the loss of their friend, but decided to press on. Let's start off with the argument that this could very well be the end. And then I'll share my thoughts on how I think it perhaps isn't the end. So I think all the pieces are there for this to be the end of Depeche Mode. I do not think either way that this is the end of any and all the music that we'll hear from Dave or Martin. I just think that it'll be in different forms, whether it's Dave working with other people, putting out solo material, or whether it's Martin putting out his solo work. I think that these individuals are, you know, creatives. They're incredibly talented, and they like producing music and will for as long as they can. The question is whether or not they will do it as Depeche Mode. There was a sense of finality to Dave's statements and the tone in his voice. I wonder whether or not Martin and Dave have actually talked about it to make a final decision. If you have, and you more than likely have been following this band, in particular, their comments relating to what happens between albums, they've said many times in the past that they didn't really know what was going to come next. They would finish the tour, they would go their separate ways, and they would check in with each other within a few years, and if Martin started writing something, then maybe they would move forward. Being that they're in the latter stages of their life at the ages that they are, if that's going to happen, it probably would happen in a shorter period of time. Dave's comments certainly seemed to reflect that if it is the end, and that was the last Depeche Mode show, which is tough to even think about or say, that he said the words that he wanted to say. And that may be it. They've finished an album that is critically acclaimed, that most of us believe is some of their best work, going back to Ultra, if not going back to Songs of Faith and Devotion, in my opinion. The tour was an immense success. There's no doubt about that at all. What better way to wrap up your career than on a massive high note of what they have just provided to all of us fans? So why may it not be the end? It may not be the end simply because of all that success that I just mentioned. Perhaps Dave and Martin have a little bit left in the tank, and they may be able to produce some more work or just a few more songs, and then potentially in a few years head out on a official farewell tour. It's something that I hadn't really thought about before, but I could definitely see the band doing. Now, again, there is an argument to be made that the way that this set list played out, that it could very well be a farewell tour in the songs that they chose. I don't know. I've got a really suspicious feeling that there's a little bit more, and that perhaps Dave and Martin in their final act as Depeche Mode give us one more album, one more EP, and maybe one more tour not attached to the passing of Fletch, and just the two of them on their own for one last time. And it's funny because as I say that, I don't know, it feels like this was the one last time. But it's hard for me when I see the footage and the reception from the fans and just how much joy there is between these individuals and just how energetic they were on this tour, to think that this would be it. You can probably hear it in my voice. It's a struggle to even comprehend, having been with this band since, a young age of 13 or 14, hearing Shake the Disease for the first time. We know we still have those 4 unreleased tracks that haven't been put out yet, which also makes me think that there still is some box set here in the future, the one that's been rumored that I've been told about. There's also some questions around a physical release, and we'll get into that of the concert, and I'll get into that with listener feedback and some information that was shared with me from a friend of the show that I have a hard time believing could be true, given just how successful this tour has been. So I guess I'll just pose the question to you. Do you think this is the end? Or do you think we'll get another Depeche Mode album and maybe a farewell tour? Did that sound like the final thoughts of this great frontman and Dave and Martin in those last comments? I mean, there is a sense of finality to it, and Dave certainly seemed emotional. Until I hear something official, I am certainly going to hold out hope. And we know for a fact that this is not the last new Depeche Mode music that we will hear, because there are still those 4 tracks that I fully expected we would have received by now. And there were 2 rumors on that, by the way, before I get to listener feedback. There was the rumor of it coming out initially in May, which is what I had heard, and then there was some talk of potentially those tracks coming out in April. So we'll get them at some point. I mean, Martin said as much, but clearly they're waiting for something. And again, it could be the potential of that box set or the physical release. So again, what do you think? Is this the beginning of the end? Is this the end? TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. I'd like to hear from you and know your thoughts. All right, let's go ahead and get to your listener feedback this week. All right, first, Jorg. I think I said George. I know you gave me the pronunciation last time. I'm sorry, man. It's been a while. Hey, John, just a quick notice I came across. It's about a possible DVD, Blu-ray, or not. Don't know whether it's true or not. DM is always full of speculations. More next time. Thanks for the show, and greetings to the listeners of the DM pod. So he sent me a translation, and I don't know where this was pulled from, so I don't know the source. But what he sent me was a screenshot from his phone, and somebody making a comment, and it goes like this. I just talked to Anton Corbijn, and there will be no official concert film released for this tour. He stated the reason why was not because it was too expensive to get planned and produced. Oh, excuse me. The reason why not was because it was too expensive and get planned and produced. The same goes for why there is no tour program. Anton told me this right now. So I have a hard time believing that's true. We've gotten a live tour for, we've gotten a physical release for a concert, for every single concert going back to, since when have we've not gotten one? Since Ultra, right? We've gotten a physical concert release for every single album. So, now, they have been this sort of combo package, which could go back to the box set. So when you look at Live in Berlin, we had this Alive in Berlin, which was the combination Anton Corbijn in the interviews, and then we got the official release. And then same thing kind of rings true for, Spirits in the Forest. We get the movie that Anton produced along with the concert. I'm taking it with a huge grain of salt, just a random comment. I don't know who this person is, but given the success of this tour, the amount that they put into the show in and of itself, I really do find it almost unbelievable to think that they would not release a concert film for this. And again, from what I've been told, there will be one eventually. Now, perhaps Anton didn't do this, and this goes back to whatever was filmed for the Mexico City shows. We know that there was a documentary that was filmed for Mexico City, and the speculation has always been, because it makes sense with regard to the theme of the album, that Mexico City would be the place where the physical release would have been filmed. So we'll wait and see, but I have a very hard time believing that this tour we would not get a physical release for. So I'm going to put, I thank you, George, for the email, but kind of you seem skeptical as well, and I am very skeptical. All right, let's go to Stephanie, friend of the show. That's Dave's last sentence. Thank you and good night. At the last concert in Cologne, it's not see you next time, as I've been talking about. Is this sentence to be taken seriously? Do we have to adjust to a life without an active Depeche Mode? Hard to imagine, but we could be very grateful for the time they gave to us. Of course. I'd be curious to hear what other fans think, as would me. That's it from me. I hope you're doing well. I am. Best wishes from the Baltic Coast, Stephanie. And again, this is a big question, and I look forward to hearing from you, as does Stephanie. All right, let's go to Dave, who writes in. Hi, John. Thinking about DM in the 21st century now that the tour has come to an end, and my mind gravitates to considering the last 20-plus years of studio work from the band. I made some lists that I feel are essential album tracks spanning the past 6 albums, not counting B-sides and Martyr, which I often forget about, although that single really rocks. So Depeche Mode in the 21st century, again, these are the tracks that he deems are essential. So Exciter, Shine, The Sweetest Condition, When the Body Speaks, Free Love, I Feel Loved, Breathe, Goodnight Lovers. We have almost the entirety of Playing the Angel, A Pain That I'm Used to, John the Revelator, Suffer Well, Sinner and Me, Precious, Nothing's Impossible, Damaged People, Lily in the Darkest Star, Sounds of the Universe, In Chains, Hold to Feed, ignored the video. I can't ignore the video, and that song, I can't on that song. Wrong, Fragile Tension and Sympathy, love that song too, Comeback. Delta Machine, Welcome to My World, Heaven. Heaven's grown on me as of late, by the way. Walking around Savannah, listening to Delta Machine, and that came on, it was like perfect. Broken, Should Be Higher, Soothe My Soul. Spirit, Going Backwards and Cover Me. Those are the only 2 tracks that get a mention. And then Memento Mori, My Cosmos Is Mine, Wagging Tongue, Ghosts Again, Don't Say You Love Me, Favorite Stranger, Soul With Me, Before We Drown, People Are Good, Always You, Never Let Me Go, and Speak to Me. So the only song that didn't make it on there was Caroline's Monkey. I mean, why not just throw it in there for good measure? Thank you for the list. I greatly appreciate it and always love hearing from you. I love hearing from all you guys. All right, let's get to our next listener feedback. David writes in. So, a few things are clear. I really like Playing the Angels, such a terrific step forward after the uneven Exciter. The good stuff on Sounds of the Universe is really good. The bad stuff is, oh boy. Delta Machine is a broken frame of this batch. It rewards re-listens and headphone time. True. I adore Memento Mori. I've even warmed to Wagging Tongue, as have I. I would only vote off Caroline's Monkey. Actually, I think this is David responding to his list from before, so my apologies. That has such a B-side vibe, doesn't it? Nah, I like Caroline's Monkey. Honestly, it's up there top 4. Do I like it more than Songs of Faith and Devotion, the album itself? Spirit may be my least favorite studio album. I might reach for Speak and Spell before Spirit. Whereas The Revolution may give Meaning of Love some competition for worst single. That being said, it's one of my favorite tours. In fact, I hate to say it, but I prefer that tour over Memento Mori. Maybe because of Heroes, maybe because of the Rose Bowl. Anyway, up late on the news of People Are Good dropping and wondering why so many awesome Memento Mori tracks didn't get tour love. Okay, John, show me how to live Spirit, live Spirit. Prove that me and Von George got it wrong. Now, listen, I'm not gonna do that. I appreciate you writing in. So that was David wrapping up the list from before. I'm sorry, my emails got jumbled. All right. Tanya Ham writes in, responding to the Signal interview from the last episode. Fantastic, interesting, informative, and entertaining interview. I really enjoyed hearing about their process and more. Great job. Thank you, Tanya. Jason writes in, what a fantastic and fascinating interview with Signal. They are obviously fans and therefore understand the fans' mindset and expectations when it comes to what they expect from a remix. Can't wait to hear People Are Good remix package when it drops this Friday. Will the band play the song in one of their 3 remaining shows? Regards, Jason. No, they unfortunately did not. And then lastly, I had a friend of the show. I think this may be Jason too, because I don't have the email here. Greetings and happy April 1st. Oh, this is DJ Sparkle. My bad. Greetings and happy 1st from DJ Sparkle in San Francisco. I promise there are no April Fool's jokes here. I came across this. It was very interesting, and I thought I would send it to you. It is amazing how well Violator sold, especially compared to everything else. So what he's talking about is chartmasters.org has the Depeche Mode equivalent album sales by era. So this includes streaming, downloads, physical singles, compilations, and the original album. One thing he said, I would send this to you. It's amazing how well Violator sold, and it really is far and above everything else on the list. How well Violator sold, especially compared to everything else. One thing I'm not entirely sure of, if you look at the chart link, do you have any idea what Orphan is? Perhaps I missed something. Yeah, it's really bizarre. So it goes through, starting with Speak and Spell, and it runs through the entirety of the of Depeche Mode's career. So we've got a huge, let's see, compilations is huge for Speak and Spell. Album sales from Speak and Spell, the original album to Broken Frame are about the same. Construction time about the same. We'll stick with just the album sales. I'm going to kind of avoid the compilations and the streaming aspect of it. It's not really relevant to all of this. We have an original album jump a little bit on Some Great Reward. We have another jump on Black Celebration. We have another jump on Music for the Masses, and then we have almost double on Violator. When we get to Songs of Faith and Devotion, we're down just a little bit less than Music for the Masses. Ultra's a little bit less than Songs of Faith and Devotion. Exciter and Playing the Angel, oddly, are about at the same. Sounds of the Universe is a little bit over half, maybe 3/4. And then we get a little less with Delta Machine, and then about half of Spirit with Delta Machine, and then Memento Mori, original album, is way down on the list. Now, what I don't understand on here is that, I don't know, I have a hard time believing at the moment that Memento Mori is less than Spirit, unless we're simply looking at Spirit has had a lot more time to accumulate further album sales. And maybe I would expect over time that Memento Mori would definitely outsell, certainly, Spirit. I mean, and honestly, I would think that it would be up there with at least, Delta Machine, if not Sounds of the Universe, given a long enough timeline. But at the same time, I don't know how those particular things are tracked anymore. Even though we have, original album, when you get into, Sounds of the Universe, we're heading into, streaming category. People aren't buying physical records anymore. So I put a lot of caveats and question marks on this Chart Masters list. But DJ Sparkle, I appreciate the input nonetheless. So listen, that wraps up the show for this week. And again, sorry for taking the week off. Even if this is the end of Depeche Mode, we still got a lot to talk about. I'm still expecting a physical tour release. I'm still expecting or anticipating the huge possibility of a box set, maybe even some more remixes, and certainly, at the very least, those 4 unreleased tracks. That being said, I have no intention of the podcast going away anytime soon. My intention is to continue to do the podcast on a weekly basis, with the occasional week off here or there. And as I've talked about many times in the past, I've got ideas for the podcast and still holding out hope that I get to interview Martin and Dave, if not one of them, separately at some point in time, especially now that the tour has wrapped up. Maybe the opportunity will come about. And based off the Signal interview, I have the opportunity to do interviews from home now, and there are several friends of mine that I definitely want to get on the show sometime in the near future. So the podcast isn't going anywhere anytime soon, even though the Memento Mori tour and the Memento Mori era are coming to an end. So thank you so much, as always, for checking out the podcast. If you've heard my pitch before for my science fiction space opera series, I will say goodbye to you now. If you are a new listener to the show and you enjoy reading science fiction, obviously you love Depeche Mode, I hope you will check out my science fiction space opera series, EMBARK. Treat yourself, a friend, or a family member with science fiction. The story is set in the future where air and space flight culture has replaced car culture, and it is inspired in part by Depeche Mode. Life in the so-called space age, the world we live in, and life in general. Depeche Mode plays a large part in the underlying themes of the story. The main character himself in 2172 is a massive Depeche Mode fan at a time in the story when the music of the 80s through the 2000s is nostalgic and popular among the characters of the story. They do feature references to your favorite band, both direct and indirect. I've had individuals actually read the stories and try to come up with all of the different references to Depeche Mode that I've included in the series, all while telling an exciting science fiction adventure space opera saga. So I hope you'll head on over to Amazon.com or mynerdworld.net and check out the series. There are 7 books in all, available in ebook, Kindle Unlimited, hardcover, paperback, and audiobook narrated by me. As Earth faces its end, follow pilots Taft, Catha, and their crew on a journey of survival across the galaxy as they fight for their future among the stars. Book 1 in the series, this is the description. The stars are within reach, as rival megacorporations D-Corp and Enercon have made interstellar travel possible and available to all humanity. 2 things that matter most to Taft Guardia are his ship, with all the upgrades a mechanic can afford, and gifted pilot Catha Morrow. When Catha arrived needing help, investigating a cryptic message from her late aerospace engineer father, Taft agreed, hoping to seize the opportunity to tell her the truth. But nothing goes as planned when Taft and Catha make a shocking discovery. Excitement turns to fear when they learn an industrial accident has set off an apocalyptic chain of events while the ruthless leader of D-Corp attempts to exploit the global evacuation. Realizing they may have found the only hope of saving Earth's evacuees, Taft faces the dire choice that could put Catha and everything he's fighting for at risk. Check out this fast-paced and action-packed science fiction series. If you like your sci-fi to be epic, filled with a lot of cool technology and action, and a little bit of romance, EMBARK is perfect for you. Written for adults, but great for ages 11 plus. Go and pick up EMBARK Book 1 today. Again, an ebook, hardcover, Kindle Unlimited, paperback, and audiobook at Amazon.com, Jon Justice, or mynerdworld.net. You can also follow me on social media at the Jon Justice, Jon at the Jon Justice, on TikTok and Instagram at the My Nerd World on X. You can follow me there as well. Thank you so much for checking out the podcast. As always, we'll hopefully be back next week. Until then, I look forward to hearing from you. TalkShowNerd at gmail.com. And I hope wherever you are happy, you are healthy, and you are safe. Bye.
Hello, this is Martin Gore from Depeche Mode.
Hi, this is Gahan from Depeche Mode, and you are listening to
My Nerd World.